Welcome to CityWise. I'm your host, Tiana Stevens. CityWise is produced by the City of Rochester to shine a spotlight on city living at its best. Rochester Animal Services is the city's animal care and control agency dedicated to improving the quality of life and safety for residents and their animals, promoting responsible pet ownership and reducing animal overpopulation. Animal Services is located on Verona Street, where it operates an animal shelter that's a community resource for locating lost pets and adopting new ones. Joining us today is Chris Fitzgerald, Director of Animal Services, and Jennifer Brown, President of the Verona Street Animal Society, a critical support group for animal services. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And Chris, we'll just start with you. What's the history of Rochester Animal Services?
Well, I've been with the city since the former administration discontinued their contract. So the Humane Society had provided animal services for several decades prior to July 2000, and that's when they stepped away from that contract to focus on their core mission, and then the city had to hire largely new staff, including myself. So we've been running animal services with animal control officers in the shelter since July 2000.
Okay, and what services are provided at the shelter?
Well, the shelter would be, as you said in your intro, it's where people should look if they're missing a pet, if it's gone missing. Accidents happen, they get out the door and so forth. It's also the place that people should turn to when they're considering adopting a new pet. So we have we take in thousands of animals every year, and so these are animals that are waiting for new homes. We provide dog bite prevention seminars to school groups, utility workers, probation and parole officers, visiting nurses, and so forth. And we're always trying to promote responsibility and education about appropriate pet care. So whether it's in a formal classroom setting or just calling up and asking us questions. And then we have a spay-neuter program also to try and do something proactively to address pet overpopulation.
Okay, and Jennifer, the Verona Street Animal Society, what do you do and what does the organization do?
Well, the organization was originally founded in February of 2005 after a meeting that I had with Chris Fitzgerald. And what we do is we support the mission of Rochester Animal Services, but more importantly, the way that we are able to support that mission is through fundraising. One of the limitations that a municipal shelter has is that it can't fundraise on its own behalf. So they are locked into the city budget that is determined every year. And as you know, their needs change or increase, they would need additional resources. So that's what Verona Street Animal Society was created for, to kind of help supplement the much needed services that Rochester Animal Services provides.
Okay. Chris, how many animals would you say you take in per year, per month?
So it's roughly 6,000 dogs and cats per year. There might be a couple hundred miscellaneous pets in that mix too. Mm-hmm. So from month to month, it varies quite a bit. The summer months are much busier, and the winter months tend to slow down in terms of intake numbers. But the shelter is generally operating at or near capacity throughout the year. Okay.
What is the process for adopting an animal?
Well, some people come across our animals on the website, city's website. We have our own URL, rochesteranimalservices.com, or seeing postings on Facebook. And so they might inquire about the animal through email or over the phone. But ultimately, you need to come down to the shelter. So whether you've seen it online or you're just planning a visit to come down the shelter, ultimately you'll have to come in, walk through, meet the animal. And I think there's some value in that initial connection there, trying to establish, a connection right from the get-go with an animal that kind of spoke to you. Mm-hmm. So after that connection is made, we do like a meet and greet. There's a short application, and then there's a generally there's a payment involved, and then if the animal has already been sterilized, spayed or neutered, it's ready to go the same day. In some cases, it hasn't been done yet, so you might end up adopting your animal but picking it up a few days later.
Okay. Do you have a recommended time frame for adoption? You don't want people just to come in on a whim and adopt an animal. What do you recommend for that?
Yeah, I mean, in general, an impulse type of adoption, you might worry that maybe it hasn't been well thought out. Not everybody in the household's expecting it, and we don't want the animal to come back. So ideally, that somebody should put some time and effort into, either researching the type of pet they want. In some cases, people want a specific breed of dog or cat. So there's a certain amount of legwork that could be done in advance that we would recommend. Certainly being aware of the responsibilities associated with the veterinary care, ensuring that they have appropriate nutrition and are kept up to date on their vaccinations. There's an expense involved, and so people need to consider those factors in there. And then, not every situation, not every animal is going to assimilate into the home environment as easily as maybe their past pet. Mm-hmm. So in some cases, it might mean a little more training or behavior modification, or maybe changing some factor that worked with the previous pet but not with the new one.
And Jennifer, on the Verona St Animal Society's website, there's a lot of information, a lot of resources. What in terms of education for new pet owners can be found there?
On the website, we do have general information where people could look up maybe a common behavioral issue or get general recommendations. But it's not as detailed as, step 1, do this, step 2, do this. But we do like to offer suggestions and then additional resources that they might go and check on their own, specifically related to what their case is.
Mm-hmm. And Chris, there's other ways besides adopting an animal that you can help out people in the community. What is the fostering program? How does that work?
So we have some folks that come to us that want to get involved on a volunteer basis as a foster caregiver, and that would be taking an animal from the shelter into their own home to care for it in a home environment while it's still in the custody of the city, and helping us get it placed into a permanent home. So what, in effect, it extends the walls of the shelter, enabling us to now make space for another animal that has come in, so that we don't have to, euthanize an animal simply because we ran out of cage space.
Mm-hmm. And we actually have a video from Animal Services to show you. It highlights the benefit of fostering and the joys as well. Let's take a look.
And how they pass, I know I ain't looking back. Oh, the years and how we change, but this one thing still remains. All we are is what we want to be, and all I know is this was meant for me. I believe this is not the end.
Okay, so that video was very nicely done. Lots of dogs and cats, but there are actually other types of animals. You mentioned miscellaneous animals. What other types of animals can be adopted?
Well, if you think about anything someone might have as a pet, at least legally can keep as a pet, guinea pigs, gerbils, hamsters, exotic birds like cockatiels, canaries, parakeets. We see those occasionally. Occasional ferrets, bunnies, but it's primarily dogs and cats.
Okay. What's the most unusual animal that you've received?
Let's see.
Or exotic bird?
I know, I'm trying to think. We did have, I know we had a cockatiel once. We've had a couple of parrots that are fairly rare because they're so expensive to buy and keep. In one instance, there was someone who was keeping a bobcat as a pet, which, that wouldn't be an animal we would place up for adoption. So, that's...
Do you get involved when you find that someone has an animal that's illegal to keep as a pet?
Yeah, our city ordinance does obviously prohibit people from keeping certain animals, wild animals in particular, as pets. So we usually work in conjunction with the State Department of Environmental Conservation on those cases to figure out what's best for the animal and the community.
Okay. Now, Jennifer, in terms of adoption, I noticed that you guys use social media a lot to promote adoptable pets. How has that helped you guys?
I think social media is just such a wonderful tool for getting people aware of Rochester Animal Services and making people in the community aware that animals at Rochester Animal Services are up for adoption. I think, in this area we have just certain facilities that fall off the tongue, and that's where people tend to go, but we're trying to utilize social media to get the word out there about Rochester Animal Services. I myself have a dog from Rochester Animal Services. Chris has two from Rochester Animal Services, so it's been a wonderful tool.
Okay. Where do most of the animals come from? Are they unwanted pets, lost pets?
The way we break it down in our system when we enter it is that it's either a stray or it's surrendered, because anything that comes in without identification and an owner saying, I don't want this pet anymore, would be labeled as a stray. So the breakdown, it's a little bit different between dogs and cats, but there's significant numbers in both categories. I think the greater number is in strays that are coming in than in surrendered pets, and we that's a good thing. I mean, we encourage people to consider all their options before they surrender a pet to a shelter, because if they have one pet, it's easier for them to focus their energy on getting that one pet, either getting the issue taken care of, it's a behavior issue, or getting it placed in a new home if they can't keep it, as opposed to putting it into a shelter environment where it may be one of 100 or 200 and having to sort of vie for attention or stay healthy in a stressful and unfamiliar place. So, significant numbers in both areas, strays being a little bit more numerous.
Do you find is there a busier season of year? Our winters are very cold, summers are very hot.
Yeah, so there's the intake numbers are much higher in the summer. It's a combination of things. The animals are more active, people are more active, so people and animals are more likely to come into contact with each other. So there's definitely more stray animals coming in during the warmer months. There's also more surrendered animals because a lot of litters come in the spring and summer, particularly for cats. So we tend to get inundated, as do most shelters, with intake of unwanted litters during really May through September.
Okay. And do offer some special discounts for adopting during those months? We
do try and do a different promotions, incentives to let people know that this is a particular time of need, or to try and incentivize adopting when we're in more of a crisis mode. And then we have other promotions and discounts throughout the year.
Mm-hmm. And Jennifer, what are some of the ways that people can get involved? Maybe they already have pets they can't adopt, they can't foster, but there's other opportunities for them. What can they do?
There's several opportunities to get involved with the Verona St Animal Society. We are always looking for volunteers to participate on committees for different things, whether it be a social media committee, whether it be an event committee, a fundraising committee if we're promoting some specific adoption event. We have committees for that. So, I mean, if you have a skill, there's a good chance we could use it.
Mm-hmm. And you do have a big event coming up this summer. Tell us about that.
So the Fast and the Furious, it's a joint venture. It's a joint event between the city and Verona St Animal Society. It's really our signature fundraising event. It started as a 10K race and a 1-mile dog walk, and it's really grown, and we have a 5K race in addition to the 10K. There still is the dog walk, but it's also more of like a pet festival. So there's pet contests and activities for the dogs. There's activities for kids. There's live music. There's exhibitors, demonstrations, vendors, food vendors. This year we're hoping to have a sampling, if you will, of Rochester's food trucks and trailers. So that'll add some more
very popular
food options for our event goers. And we added a rabies clinic and microchip clinic in last year too, which were popular. So folks can come down and get their animal vaccinated at no charge during the event, and then we some people had their animals implanted with microchips, and there was a fee for that.
How have you found that to be helpful in terms of the work that you do?
The microchipping?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's becoming more popular, and every time we find an animal with a chip that has been appropriately registered, we're able to connect with either the current owner or the previous owner. So, to the extent that people follow through with their registration and make sure that they stay current in whatever system it was registered, it's really helpful. In general, we want to, if we come across an animal that's owned, whether it has a collar with a tag or a chip, we want to try and connect it back to the owner as soon as possible. In some cases, it doesn't even have to come to the shelter if you can make that connection out in the neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. But the less time that has to spend in the shelter, the better it is for that animal and for the other animals coming in. So I think it's growing in popularity. We chip every animal that's adopted from the shelter. So in that regard, our community of identified animals is growing, and then our partners in the veterinary community are also providing that service to pet owners. So if people are interested in getting their animal microchipped, it's a good question to follow up with your veterinarian.
Okay. And back to the Fast and Furious event, how can people find more information, get registered? Is there a fee to participate?
Our information for this event is posted on our website, which is vsas.org. Some of that information is available online as far as registering and finding out the times of the races and such. So we do post that information on social media, mm-hmm. so that people can access that through social media as well.
Okay, Chris, what are some of the other resources that people can find on RochesterAnimalServices.com? I know there's some videos of adoptable pets. What else is on that website?
Well, we have information about spay-neuter. We have information about our different services that we offer, what animal control is, and what that service is for the city. We have some information and tips for residents regarding wildlife, so that they can minimize nuisance impacts of wildlife around their home. There's information about, like we said, the foster program, the volunteer program, how to get involved in volunteering at the shelter. You can access the application online. There's really there's something for every facet of our operation.
And you mentioned there's information on what to do if you have a wildlife issue. So that's something separate that Animal Services wouldn't handle. What does someone do, say if there's a raccoon in their garbage or something else, a beaver, sometimes with a canal?
Sure.
We have those wandering through the neighborhoods. What should someone do?
Well, in most cases, if it's a native animal, a wild animal that's native to the area and it's outside, it's in its own environment, even if it seems like your backyard or your trash might not be part of it. But so in most cases, it's just a matter of staying in a safe distance from it, not threatening it or scaring it in any way that's going to put you or the community in any kind of jeopardy. But when an animal enters the home, so if we had an animal walk in here in the studio, that would be an animal control issue because there's an immediate public safety concern. And so an animal control officer would come and attempt to remove that animal from the living quarters of a home. When nuisance animals get into non-living spaces like walls and attics and basements, there are a host of private companies in our community that specialize on nuisance wildlife removal, and the issue is not it's not one that's just about removing it. It's about identifying where the problem is and the point of entry, and ensuring that if you can get the animal out, that they can't get back in. So those are services that extend beyond what the city would be able to provide.
And I've noticed a lot of rabbits, during the spring and summer, and we're coming up on Easter. Do you find that people give rabbits still as pets, and then maybe after a couple months they take them to Animal Services? What's your advice on that?
I think the same as the advice for the dogs and cats. You really have to think through the whole process. Is this a commitment that you're willing to make for the lifetime of that particular animal, and not just jumping into it because of it's cute and fuzzy and fluffy for a seasonal or a holiday gift. So we do see some rabbits come in the spring, and they may have been failed Easter presents. Generally we're not going to get that information from people turning them in, because they're going to want to not feel like we're going to refuse them or judge them in some way. But so oftentimes the animal comes in as a stray or as a pet that they can no longer care for, and we don't have the details of what really went wrong.
Okay. All right, well, thank you guys very much for coming in today. And for more information on Rochester Animal Services or the Verona St Animal Society, you can visit rochesteranimalservices.com, and you can find a link to Verona St there. You can also call 428-7274. Thank you for joining us on this edition of CityWise. I'm Tiana Stevens, and we'll see you next week.